So we're here to talk about the WinNow personalized coaching system. Four key insights to execute a 30% increase in match wins this season so that you can turn a losing season into a winning season and a winning season into a championship season. So a little bit about me. I've been around volleyball for a very long time. Started playing in high school in the 60s, and so the rules have changed pretty dramatically since then. I attended Stanford and played there. It was still a club program, and it was in transition to varsity status. I ended up coaching the last 2 years during that transition, and in '76 we went to full varsity status. I spent 30 years in Silicon Valley as a software marketing guy, and I got back into coaching about 10 years ago when my son got interested. He's now in college, so he's no longer at home to go, and started coaching girls and found it to be really challenging. So I did the next best thing, which was to attend coaching clinics. I got my USAV Cap 1 and 2 certifications, went to gold medal squared sessions, Art of Coaching Volleyball, and I've attended a lot of sessions at the AVCA convention each year because they've got so many great seminars to attend. I learned a lot. It was just fantastic stuff and really helped me to improve my teaching skills. At the same time, I learned a lot about stats and how important they are. And in fact, as I've gotten into this stats business, I've learned enough that I've taught over 500 coaches about how to use stats to make their teams better at various webinars and seminars for the AVCA, USAV CAP, and Art of Coaching Volleyball. So let's talk about the 5 killers of a winning season. So the first one is how much do you lose by? 23-25, 21-25, 19-25. By the time you get to 19-25, that happens a lot, right? And so what would happen if you turn these into wins? It would be a substantial change, I'm sure, to your season. And in fact, there's the margin of victory is really a lot smaller than you think. Dr. Gil Fellingham, professor of statistics at BYU, did a study, and he found that if your side-out percentage improves by just 2%, your win rate goes up by 28%. Okay, so it only takes a small key improvements to close this gap. And in reality, the gap in these scores is a lot less than you think because of the whole rally scoring system that we use. So as an example, in a match, what does this mean to make a 2.5% improvement? Well, on average, you take 20 serves. And so if you just prevent from missing one receive error, that's 1 in 20 or 5%. And if your side out rate is 50%, that's already a 2.5% improvement in your side out rate, which would give you the greater than 28% more wins. All right, so the changes are really subtle, and just a few little things can really affect the way your season will go. Now, the second question is, you're on the same system and drills every year. So every year you have different players, and even the same players change in abilities, attitude, size, and strength. And your competition certainly changes. So shouldn't you be customizing your systems and drills to extract the most out of your team? So the next one is, have you optimized every rotation? So rotation optimization is a key methodology for extracting the most out of your talent. Because one thing you need to remember is improving skills is slow, but using different systems, positioning people in different places, substituting in a different way, and running strategies, these are much faster to learn, and they can really make a change. And remember, you're only looking for that slight little improvement in your receive statistics to change your game outcome. So number 4, do you really understand stats? So the first part is, who's the better hitter? Hitter A at 300 or hitter B at 200? And then, do you have too many stats and don't really know what to do? So the first one is, to know who's the better hitter, you need context. So what's the level of competition? And the second one, having a lot of stats can really be overwhelming. And we have some ways to cut through the clutter and guide you to the key insights that you need. So let's go back to the hitter example and provide a little bit more information. So the first one is Meg, is a 200 hitter. She has a 60% kill rate, so she has 6 kills, 4 errors on 10 attempts. So she doesn't leave any balls in play. Sam, on the other hand, is a 300 hitter. It's a 30% kill rate, so she makes 3 kills and has no errors on 10 attempts. So who's the better hitter? And the answer is, well, it depends. So how good is your opponent? So a really good opponent who has a dig to kill ratio of 33%, right? So in Meg's case, nothing changes because she doesn't leave any balls in play, so she's a plus 2 points. Sam, on the other hand, leaves 7 balls in play, and those balls come back at you, so she's only at a plus 1 point. However, if you play against a weak opponent who sides out, who hits about 50% out and has only about a 16% kill rate on transition, in Meg's case, again, nothing changes because there's no balls in play. In Sam's case, you're actually at plus 5 points net. So in this case, when you're playing against a poor opponent, keeping the ball in play is really important. So context is critical. As you can see, it depends on your opponent's skill level which player you pick as your primary hitter. It also depends on your goal. Do you want to win this match, or do you want to develop your players for future years? So learning to swing hard is important for future play. Learning to swing smart is important for current and future play. And so what's your goal? Now the fifth item is, do you spend 15 to 30 minutes each practice warming up, doing running, DROM, stretching before you touch the ball? Now, Bill Neville, who's a former USA volleyball national team coach, teaches a seminar called Stop Wasting Time Running Around the Gym. And it's exactly that. He says, you're robbing your team of thousands of touches, and warm-ups have been shown scientifically that they don't reduce injury. So what does this mean in real numbers? It looks something like this. Let's assume that you spend approximately 20 minutes each practice without the ball warming up. So if you take a school season example where you go 5 days a week, 2 hours a day, 10 weeks, the math is 20 minutes times 5 days times 10 weeks, which turns into 1,000 minutes. And that looks like 16 hours or 8 days of practice. So it's a lot of time spent not really improving your team's skills. You're getting nice and warm, but it's really not changing much relative to touches. So you really want to start up using a ball and warm up slowly and do challenging things that aren't going to require you running around really hard. But again, you're improving the team's skill while they're warming up. So if you say yes to 2 or more of these, we can help you have a better season. So here's some things to consider around stats, right? First part of it is, why are you here? For some of you, you have to take stats because of league requirements. For others, it's mostly about team improvement, and maybe you're doing a little both. Now, one thing to consider is that stats are critical to your team success regardless of how dominating you are, because even if you're great in your league and wiping everybody out, at some point, you're going to go into regional or state or national championships, and there will be somebody who's better than you out there. And even Russ Rose, who I've talked to extensively about this kind of stuff, is that Penn State needs stats too to win, in spite of the fact that they've won more national championships than any other school. So the next point is that Moneyball meets volleyball, and the book is really used extensively in clinics as recommended reading because of this key line from Michael Lewis. Some coaches believed they could judge a player's performance simply by watching it. In this, they were deeply mistaken. Now, consider, these are Major League Baseball coaches making multi-million-dollar decisions incorrectly. And so I hope that we can do better by being a little smarter and applying stats. So here's my story around stats. The first phase was that I wanted to improve my rotations, and it was really hard to do on pencil and paper. And so, this forced me to kind of consider writing software for that, and that's how Rotate 123 was created. The second part was that stats products were both expensive and hard to use, and of course the iPad didn't ship until 2010. Now, once I had stats, I really didn't know what to do, and there were no seminars on using stats to improve your team's performance. I have a bachelor's in engineering and an MBA from Stanford, and I'm a pretty analytical guy, but it was still very hard for me to figure out what's going on. And so I had to take a deep dive into these numbers and also reach out to some key members of the AVCA. Now, as luck would have it, Jamie Morrison, who's current assistant coach to Karch on the USA national women's team, contacted me. He did 8 years with Hugh McCutcheon on both the women's and the men's side as the chief statistician and assistant coach. Now, between the 2 gigs, he was at UC Irvine and also a club coach, and he picked up solo stats and called me about some features that he wanted to see added, and we got into good discussions about stats and how they matter for teams. So that was really a great mentoring activity for me. Todd Dagenet, who's the head coach, University of Central Florida, is both a USAV CAP 1 and 2 instructor, and he did one of the few courses I've seen related to the stats and how to use them in your training. And he's a great guy, really smart guy, and very, very helpful to me in improving my product and providing me with directions about what to do next. Rob Bean, who's the head coach at Oakland University in Michigan, did a rare study of high school volleyball stats success factors. And the reason it's so rare is that most of the studies are done at the international or the NC2A Division I level. So it's really pretty elite athletes. This was the first time I saw something that was lower than that, and he had some really great insights to offer. So here's what I've learned. Stats really don't mean anything without context. So the context is the quality of your league and competition and your team goal, winning versus development. Now look at the next table for some ideas. So you'll see it on the left side is the level of play. So you've got novice, intermediate, advanced, and advanced, and there's some examples below that. And then across the top, you'll see the first phase is side out percentage. You can see how the side out percentage goes from not very good to very good at the college level. And then point scoring is the exact opposite of that, right? So point scoring a percentage of 75% would mean that you would serve on average 4 balls and score 3 times before you give up the serve. So that's a 75% point scoring. It's just the inverse of side out, okay? So you can see that the arms race goes in favor of the server initially, and of course, as the teams get better, they get better at receiving. And so now at the college level, you can see that effectiveness goes down dramatically for point scoring. And so the server is at a disadvantage, and that's why in the college game, you see so many balls being served into the net or out because the servers are being very, very aggressive because they know if they're not, they can't control the game. Along with this is the number of rotations per game. And so you can see at the novice level, sometimes you don't even complete 6 rotations, right? A server will stand there and serve 15 balls in a row, okay, and the game will be over. And so as you get better, and as you start getting it to college level and even higher, the side out rate goes up dramatically. At the international level, it's about 18 rotations, and so you're literally side out, side out, side out, side out, point. And the team that has a 2-point lead after 15 pretty much wins every game. Pass rating, of course, goes up because that's the ball control side of receiving. And then hitting efficiency also goes up, and the rate of termination goes up dramatically here. So one key number to remember is that your side out percent plus your point scoring percent greater than 100 is what you need to win. All right, so some critical things that I've learned. Really the first and most critical epiphany is who's your opponent, right? So, many of you think it's the team across the net, but really it's not. Your opponent is time, right? And why is it time? Well, think about it like this, right? If you could cram 3 seasons of training into one, wouldn't your team be way better than your competition? Assuming you started approximately the same basic athleticism and skill level. So the question becomes, how do you use your time? So here are the 4 key insights. The first one we've talked about already is about context, right? And so this should determine how you allocate your time on different skills and tactics. And look at the next table. So how competitive is your team? Okay, so the score is really bad at 5 to 25 all the way to 20 to 25. Now you're getting close, and you can see the side out rates as an example. These are just kind of proxy numbers to give you a rough idea of where you stand. Now, as you know, at the low level here, it's critical that you spend all your time on serve and receive because, frankly, you're not getting to hit and dig and all those other activities much at all, right? So this is where you really want to spend your time. And one thing to always keep in mind is that, tough serving can really neutralize a team that's better than you, okay? So that's a really good place to invest your time. And then as you get better and more competitive, then you can spend more time on sets and digs. And at all times, blocking is the least critical skill to winning. So as you can see from the prior chart, right, the less competitive you are, the more time you need to spend on serving and receiving. And so two reasons, right? What do you need to look for in your players, and where should you focus your time at practice? So you need to be careful not to over allocate your time setting and hitting when your passing and serving skills are subpar, right? Hitting is fun and dramatic, but if you can't control the ball, you'll never hit the ball. So the next step in this tactics part is another buildable quote, which is never do tactically what you can't do technically. And what does this mean? It means that you don't want to overcomplicate your system when you don't have the right level of ball control. So you can't be running fancy, patterns and, quicks and things like that if you can't control that first ball. Okay. So, why practice quick middle sets when you pass less than 10% perfect passes, right? And so it's a real consideration that you have to keep in mind. So the second insight is time and return on investment. So typically return on investment in finance is if I spend $100, how much will I get back in a certain amount of time? In volleyball, you might want to think about it in terms of if I spend an hour on this drill, how many points will I gain or not lose in a match? I think if you take this mindset, it will really change the way you think about your practice and how you're spending your time. Now, ROI typically has two forms, long-term and short-term. So long-term are things like skill improvement. In fact, skill improvement can take years, right, to get really proficient at something and get better and better over time. However, there are short-term investments like positioning and strategy that you can learn very quickly. And some of these optimizations can really help you to get those few points that you need to win. So, here's an example, right? If you haven't statted your player serve receives rating, how do you know that you have the right players on the court? Okay. And this is an example of don't eyeball serve receive. It's just like the money ball scenario where you can't watch a hitter hit a few balls and assume they're great because they may be having a great hitting streak right now, but you need a lot of data, like 100 examples of hitting, 100 examples of receiving, right, to know that this person really is a good passer. Okay. So, if you have the right players on the court, are they in the best locations? That's the other part of the optimization. And these kinds of choices can be made. And if you do it right, you can really get those few points that you need to win more matches. So after you get your ROI, there's two ways of processing that. The first part of it is being efficient with your time, and the second half is effective. So efficient is to prioritize on key point gain and loss areas first, and the second part is then using good methodology to train your players in the shortest time. So you choose the right things and teach it in the right way. Now here's an example of being more efficient with your time, right? If you've taken stats and have a breakdown of your side out percentage by rotation, which if you're a solo stats user with web reports, you'll know this right off the top. You'll see that instead of practicing all 6 rotations for an hour, so spending 10 minutes per rotation, typically you'll have 2 bad rotations. And if you spend, let's say it's on rotation 2 and 6, you can spend 30 minutes each. You will improve these much more so because now you're spending 3 times more time on each of those rotations, and hence those rotations should get better. And here's the biggest problem during game time, right? It's the potholes that kill you. So the stronger rotations don't get you stuck, it's the weak ones that do. And when you get stuck, the stuckness gets worse because usually your team gets a little depressed, they get tense, and then they make even more mistakes. So fixing those potholes is really a high priority. And so spending more time is a good thing to do. Maybe you have one rotation that's really bad. Well, spend a full hour on it and get it to be better. So that's the efficient use of your time by focusing on the key things that matter. The second phase is being effective with your time. So you want to make the drill as mindful as possible. So an example is your team has to get the ball back because you're going to start the score at 23-23. And if you don't get the ball in 2 points, you lose. And then that team now has to deal with the consequence like running liners. Right? So you're finding a way to put pressure on your team so that they're being mindful, and then they have to get out of that rotation. So my real world solution is about customizing your coaching, right? Because each team, each year is different, and each year your competition changes. And you want to have high time ROI and be efficient and effective. So you want to customize your coaching to meet your team's competitive needs. So you want to think about it like this, right? You can either spend little time on everything, so basically uncustomized standard drills every year, standard formations and tactics, or you want to do a lot of a few things and really customize to your players in the tactics. So you want to prioritize around the highest ROI things you need to improve to win. And you just need to do a few things really well to get that side out number to be just a little bit better, 2%, right? To really change your season. So here's my personal example. I was in my 6th year as a high school coach in 2013 in a public school in Northern California. And since we can't recruit or anything like that, it's the luck of the draw as far as who shows up. And in 2 years, we had 4 transfers that really changed things. We went from a 2-12 league season to just the opposite of that as these new players come on board. And so we had a really great chance of winning a very tough Northern California public school league. But it wasn't that easy. I mean, I did my analysis, so I had my best passers on the court, right? My outsides and my liberos had good pass ratings, and we trained hard to become excellent servers. So we put the radar gun on our players and had them serve consistently at greater than 38 miles an hour, deep into the court. And then we had our players run lots of attack patterns through the middle in order to get isolations on the outside. And we also worked hard to get our middles to close, because they had to chase down those go sets, and you had 1.5 seconds to close the block to the outside. So we worked really, really hard. So the season started well, but then, in the 3rd match of the season, we ran into one of the tough teams, and, we lost 2-3, and we got blown out in the 5th set. So the question was, what went wrong? So I went through my videos and my stats, and one thing was clear, right? Our digging numbers were way down. We were up in the 70s, and now we're down at 64%. And while the outsides were digging well and they're playing middle back, libero was getting hammered on the left side because the opposing team had one strong outside hitter that was really killing us. So we needed to fix this problem. So the first phase was to get the right player in the right place. And again, instead of trying to become just a better team, right, I took advantage of the fact that one of my 2 outsides was taller, and she was about 6 feet tall, and just a great player all around. And so I moved her to the right side, but in order to do that, I had to move my setter to the left side. So we had to practice that. And the only intent was not so much to close down and stop their outside hitter, but just to slow down that hitter and make them think. Okay. So we practiced this extensively to get it right. The next thing we did was overspeed training. So here, I brought my son in, who at the time was 6'1", 175 pounds. He was hitting, probably about 20% harder than any of the hitters in the league. And so I told the girls, you don't have any choice. You have to dig him. You have to stand there, and you can't be flinching. You got to stand in and dig that ball. And so they got used to the high-speed ball. That really helped them in competition. So the result was great. We saw the same team again, and we beat them 3-2 in the 2nd round, but the game actually would have been 3-0, except one of my middles went down with an injury, ankle injury during the 1st set, and then she missed most of the 2nd set, came back in after she got taped in the 2nd set, and then we beat them 3-0 from there, taking the 3rd, 4th, and 5th sets. And our stats were way better, as you might expect. We really slowed down their outside hitter, started to make her think, and the tide just moved to our side. And so we completed our season 13-1, took the championship. In fact, we used that same tactic against 2 of the other better teams because each of them had one good outside hitter. And because I scouted them, I knew what rotation they were starting in, so we spun our rotation to line up with them and had our best blocker right in front of their best hitter. So I want to introduce you to the WinNow personalized coaching system. It's a culmination of a lot of years of experience, both volleyball, in software, and in coaching. And I'm trying to make a set of tools that are both time-saving, they're powerful, they're really easy to use, and I want to help you, increase your win rate by 30%. And so this is the suite of products. We have Rotate 123, Solo Stats, Web Reports, and Solo Stats Video. And so let me just take a quick summary of each of these. So Rotate 123 allows you to set up your formations quickly using templates and allows you to do lots of customizations and substitutions in order to get the best people on the court at the right time. Okay, and so you can do lots of what-if analysis. In addition, Rotate 123 Pro allows you to do matchups. So for school seasons, when you can actually scout and know the opposition, you can actually set up their rotations against yours and see what happens when you say shift your rotation 3 to their rotation 6. Do you get an advantage? And you can go rotation by rotation to figure out what's the best lineup. And I tell you, that's a really difficult thing to do on paper, and this tool is used pretty extensively by college teams because they know what their competition looks like. Solo Stats, of course, for taking stats, and since most of you know this, I don't need to dig too deeply into this, and I'll show you some examples in a second. And then web reports is where the data goes from SoloStats. When you back that up, it ends up on our server, and we provide more than 20 reports. And in addition, we have exports to Max Preps, Excel, and box scores. Web reports is completely designed so that you don't have to take out Excel, because my belief is if you break out Excel, now you've burned an extra hour that you don't have. And I'd rather have you instantly get your insights rather than have to do a lot of paperwork and pushing numbers around. SoloStats Video basically synchronizes your stats from SoloStats with video, and then allows you to see all kinds of different cuts by filtering on player and action. And I'll show you that in 1 second. It's really easy to use. Now, all of these tools are great, except that, without a little training, you really don't get the most out of it. And so, the personalized coach training here is about providing, a training process for you. And so the WinNow coaching process is 5 steps, right? It's set context and establish goals, optimize your rotations with your players and systems. You want to test it, tune it, and then determine the key strategies, tactics, and training methods that you need to improve your performance. Now, the other part of it is that we have 5 guiding principles when we do this. We look for high ROI. We like to play the odds. We want to maintain simplicity. And we know that small things matter. And then we want to be aggressive. We want to build a customized coaching plan for your team. And so the WinNow Coach Training is a 200-slide self-paced training system. And we hope that this will get you the 4 to 8 points you need to win more matches. So let me do a quick demo at this point to show you how these products come together. So we'll be going from SoloStats to web reports, and from web reports to video, and then from there back to Rotate 1, 2, 3. Now let me show you how easy it is to sync video. Let me drop back here. So the first thing you do with your video is you take that over and upload it to YouTube. And YouTube now, because of the capacity that they have, you can really upload pretty long files. Now, typically what you want to do is you want to shoot a set, just let the camera run, and then shut it off, move the camera to the other side, because usually it's easier to see your team when you're shooting from behind them. So this is a match from the Puget Sound qualifier. And so I'm going to go down to the share button here. I'm going to grab that URL. I'm going to copy that. Okay. And then now I will take that over to SoloStats video. So let me open up this page a little bit. Let me shrink it down so you can see it a little better. Okay. And so here's the match. It's Moxie 17 Pika 2014. And so I'll click the add video button. I'll paste that URL from that video from YouTube. I'll say OK. Okay. And now I'll double click the first row and it'll start the video. And you notice there's a whole bunch of introductory stuff happening here, which is not really important. So I'm going to move it to where I think the game starts at about 1 minute 40 seconds in. So let's see if I'm there. Okay. So now the team's here. The first stat is number 55, Miranda. It's a in-rally pass, a 3 pass. So she's standing here. So let's watch for that. Okay, the pass is there. We stop it. And then you notice down here, this is the offset. Right now, it's starting at the very beginning, which is where all the intros are happening. But we needed to go to 151, as you can see here. Let me boost that up a little bit. All right, so let me try that again. Okay, so so you can see it's off. So I'm going to press sync, which will move the offset to 151, which is where this is now. And then all the other timestamps are adjusted accordingly. And so basically in SoloStats, every time you take a stat, we are providing a real-time stamp. And here we're aligning the time on the video with the time in SoloStats, and everything else just links up automatically. So you don't have to sit there and do much work at all. So let's do some samples here just to see if the synchronization work. We're gonna kind of scroll up here, and I really like our middle. She's pretty kind of fun to watch. So here's an earned spike, and so I'm gonna double click that, and I'm gonna go back up here. And so the playing head should move. All right, pass comes up, and now here comes a set, and there she is, boom, right off the middle blocker, okay? So you can see that the synchronization is working fine. And of course, if you ever get out of sync, because let's say, you got something to do with the ref, or the, scorekeepers have forgotten, they've fallen asleep and have done something, and then you forgot to stat that, you can always go back here and enter a new synchronization point to get everything back in order again, okay? So it's very, very easy to do. All right, so now let's go into our analysis. What we're going to do is we're going to take our SoloStats info and I'm going to press back up and push all of that data onto our server to web reports. Now I'm going to jump to web reports. Okay, so I've got my team selected here, the Red Rock 17-2 and matches, and I've selected our qualifier plus Las Vegas showcase. And I'm going to go to Analyze, and I'm going to look at our receive stats. So our receive stats are here, and so let's see. Oops, sorry. And so you can see the different rotations here, and you got 59%, 57. So notice that in rotation 4, that's the low one. 50.8 is the low side out statistic, right? So I'll click on that, and it'll expand. And this allows you to drill down into the data to figure out what is going on here. And if you notice, right, the first thing you see, and these highlighted fields are the ones that are large numbers, whether they're positive or negative. They're just looking at large numbers, so your eyeball will go there. And in this case, you can see that Bianca has 9 receive errors in this particular rotation, much more than our other primary passer here, the other outside hitter. Okay, so we want to see what's going on in rotation 4 for Bianca. So now we're going to go over to SoloStats video again, and we'll go to the filter page. And what we're going to do is we're going to deselect everybody else except Bianca, deselect the rotations except 4, and then everything else is going to get deselected here, including false, and we're just worried about receive errors. Okay, now this just created a database query called Bianca rotation 4 receive errors. All right, and so when we press results, it does a query, and 18 records show up that meet that profile. And so let's go down here and look at this particular match. So the head moves to that point, and here we are. We're in rotation 4. It's a 6-2, so it looks like 1. And there's Bianca. There goes the ball. Now, the video might be a little bit jerky because we're in our webinar, and the conferencing software is a little bit slow. But in actuality, this will be nice and smooth like you normally see in YouTube. Okay, so that's one example. So let's look at another one against another team. We'll click on that. And we're shooting from a different angle. She's standing over here on the other side of the court, and same thing, just to the right, and she shanks the ball. Okay, so now there's a couple things you could do. You could focus on her passing to the right side of her body in that particular area, so get her to kind of line up better, step back quicker. Or the other choice is maybe you can do something with the rotation and make an adjustment there. So let me grab, rotate 1, 2, 3, and this is the team structure. Right, and this is how it looks. And so we got our different rotations here. Rotation 4, there she is, Bianca, there's the setter, right? So one choice would be to move her out of the passing lane and not have also the setter running in front of her, which tends to be distracting at times, and good teams tend to serve right into that lane. So let's go to an alternate layout. And then what we can do is we can move Bianca up, and then we can move the setter up as well. Now, as I move the setter up, you notice that red line shows up, and that's the overlap checker, right? So rotate 1, 2, 3 will prevent you from creating an illegal rotational setup. Okay, it's like your spelling checker will prevent you from, typing bad words, right? So now I'm going to move my barrel to the right and my my outside, and I'm going to pull my opposite back, and she's an okay passer, so we can do this and still have an effective receive formation, and maybe this will cure our problem. So this is an alternative. Now, there's other formations you could easily run, and so you can try all of these different things with rotate 1, 2, 3, and then test it with your team. So this is the test and tune phase of your work. Okay, so let's go back here, and so let me just do a quick review of what we've done. All right, so hang on, let me get through the screen. All right, so we did our backup, we did our rotational analysis, right? We found that particular situation in the filter tab of video. We watched the video to see what the pattern was, and then we considered an alternative to that, okay? So that's an integrated process of using all the tools to help you tune up your team and make it a better team. All right, so here's some key steps, and this is a little bit of a takeaway for you. And this file, let's see, is it downloadable, Steve? I don't see it there, but we will send it to you as a thank you for attending. And so you'll have this next set of slides available as a little instructional sheet to make some improvements. So the first phase is this, right? Step one, really do your serve receive stats, okay? You can do this on your team in practice and do stats on a board and really look at those numbers, right? And so that way you'll know who are the best passers. And again, eyeballing is not good enough because there's two stats you want to know. You want to know the receive rating and their error rates. So, that's a key part of the process that you want to work on, okay? And so in this case, for an advanced level, you probably want to be under 10% errors. At novice level, maybe under 25%. You really want to look for the players that have low error rates. Rather than focusing in on the rating number, look for the error rates because these are the ones that cost you points immediately, right? Now, the next phase, of course, is looking at the pass rating, but the pass rating is highly contextual, meaning that if you're not running a lot of ones through the middle and you don't have people maybe that can hit it or you can't really set that ball, then maybe your focus should be more on error reduction rather than perfect passing. And maybe you really want to be focused on passing off the net. Now, the other choice is to learn how to set the ball from farther off the net, in fact, by expanding your perfect pass zone by moving it, say, to 7 feet off the net and being able to hit from there if you have tall enough middles, right? Then you've expanded your three pass. And the nice part of doing that is you have less balls actually going over the net when they're trying to make perfect passes. And those balls that go over the net, of course, against good competition is typically right back in your face. So those are very, very expensive errors. By trying to be a little bit too precise, by opening up the zone, loosening it up, and pulling the passes off the net, you can also reduce errors that way and also still be able to run it quick. Okay, so that's another strategic alternative that you have. Now, the second step is looking at your side out percentage by rotation. We've done this already, and of course, Web Reports in the Analyze tab allows you to do this very, very easily. And because we have drill down capabilities, you can go right down and find out who's doing what. And if you synchronize the video, you can even watch it, which is really a better way to do the analysis rather than staring at a bunch of numbers. Now, the third is serving. And serving, is one where if you have a radar gun, it's really an easy thing to do of, getting the pace up. And if you serve deep into the court at over 38 miles an hour into the last 3 feet of the court, it's really, makes a huge difference in your game control because most teams, once you start getting up at that rate, balls start going all over the place. Once you get to 40 miles an hour and you can do that consistently, you're going to have control of the matches. You'll be taking the ball back from your opponent all the time, okay? And now there's some ways to do this if you don't have a radar gun. One is to put an elastic band across the top, tied to the top of the antenna. And so your team's objective is to serve the ball above the top of the net and below the elastic into the last 3 feet of the court. And if you do that, the ball is going to be traveling about 38 miles an hour. It's just the basic physics of what's going on. And at the same time, you really want to drive towards a low error rate. Right? So you don't want to be making errors while you're serving tough. You need to be able to do both, actually. And actually, Hugh McCutcheon had a point about this. He said the U.S. teams are some of the worst servers in the world because we don't spend enough time serving. Okay, so think about that in your next practice. Now, the next part is to tune your rotations. Now, one thing to consider is, depending on the level of play, your number of rotations changes pretty dramatically during a match. And if you're at a team site where your rotation count is under 12, look at your stats and see how many rotations you've gone through before you've ended the given set, right? Lots of teams will finish at about 9 to 10 rotations. And if that's the case, this strategy is absolutely critical, which is you want to get your best 3 servers up front and your best 3 side out rotations up front. Because, why? Because these rotations will happen twice, while the last 3 rotations may only happen once, okay? So this gives you a huge advantage. Again, you're looking for a couple of points here and there, and that will make a huge difference in the outcome of your matches. So this is a really, really strategic play. This happens at the lower levels of play where, the team has 3 really good servers at the front, and they only go through 3 rotations, and they scored 25 points already. Well, guess what? In higher levels of play, you may get around the rotations all the way back again, but you'll come back to rotations, 7, 8, 9, and you want to stop the game by then, by having the best servers and the best side-out rotations up early. So, this is just a short sample of the teaching method we provide, and the WinNow self-paced training provides way more than this. in detail, but I just want to provide something as a starting point so that you can start using this today. So let me go over what this package system looks like. So it includes a 1-year Pro bundle subscription, which is worth $154, and that includes SoloStats Pro, Rotate 123 Pro, Web Reports Pro, and SoloStats Video. In addition, you get the WinNow Coach Training, which is $149, and it's a 200-slide self-paced training. And then the key part of the personalized is the support. You'll get support from me on unlimited annual email support and 2 hours of phone consultation time. Right, so it's almost a $600 value, and we were offering it for $199 tonight. Okay, so you know, it's guaranteed. So you know, if you're not happy with it after you've tried the methodology, then we will refund your money. And so you know, I'd like to get into that whole Moneyball revolution here, where we're going to beat that clock. We're going to get high ROI on our time. We're going to be efficient and effective. We want to focus on the things that matter, and we want to get the right players in the right positions, in the right formations, at the right time on the court. Okay, that's rotation optimization. And so if you're interested in this, you can go to this URL, winnowvb.com. If you have any questions, you can contact me, Kyle at Rotate123. And at this point, please start typing in your questions. I'm sure you have a few. I went through that a little bit quickly. And I will start reading off some of the questions, and Steve will be relaying them to me as well. So let me go into the first question. Hang on here. Okay, so the first question is, what does personalized mean? It's basically about me acting as your sort of stats assistant coach and help you kind of cut through all the clutter to focus in on the key numbers that matter and get you the insights you need to make the improvements in performance of your team to win more matches. The next question is, what if I have the Pro bundle or some other products already? You'll get credit for that. So let's assume that you still have 11 months left on your Pro bundle. Well, that remaining value will be applied towards the $199 for this package, and so you may only pay about $50 for the entire thing, right? That may be the incremental cost. Okay. Let's see. Other questions? Hang on. Okay, let's see. I have a pile of stats. How will you help me with this? We have a process for going through the numbers, and I will help you step you through that. And in fact, that the first set of things that I've already provided this evening is an example of where do you want to focus first as you start looking at the numbers, and then where do you focus second and third, okay? Because what happens is you get this pile of numbers and it's just kind of blinding, and you start looking at it going, oh, what do I do with this stuff? And really, there's only a few key numbers that matter initially. If you don't fix those things, the serve and receive part of the game, the follow-on things that occur, just aren't going to improve. So for example, it's going to be very hard to improve your kill rates if your passing's bad, right? Because your setters are probably doing all kinds of acrobatics to try to get the ball to the hitters. The hitters aren't getting a great set, and so they're not taking great swings, right? So it's all this kind of chaining effects. And so I prefer to focus on the first contact. If we get the first contact right, the following contacts get a lot better. Okay, let's see. Steve, okay, here's another one. Let's see. Oh yeah, so here's a question that comes up, and this is another question that comes up quite a bit actually. And so let me pull in an example. One is about scoring assists, two sides of it, both for blocking and for setting. So let's take the block example. If you have two people blocking the ball, what you want to do is enter the blocks. So say you click on Abby here, you click on block, double tap block, enter that value, and the assist button down here will light up, and press that, and then the second player that was involved. So that's how you do a block assist. On a set assist, normally in your setup screen, right, you have assigned your setter for the game, or it could be split between two setters. And if somebody else sets the ball, then what you want to do is enter the kill as you normally do. So let's say it's 43, and then spike, double tap that to enter it, and then the assist button will come alive again. Click that, and then tap the player who made the set. Now, if the ball came from over the net, just tap assist and then their player. And that's the way you assign the assist away from your team and to make sure the count's correct. Okay, let's see. Get the next question here. Let's see. Okay, there's a question about how does the product line compare to Huddle on the video side? Huddle's focus coming out of football is very much what they call breakdown, which is a manual indexing process, and they're very good at providing sharing capabilities with coaches and players. But the problem is that volleyball. Number one, we play a lot of matches compared to football, which you play very few. And then typically you don't have very many assistant coaches if you even have an assistant coach. So I don't think that most volleyball coaches want to spend the time, rewatching an entire game and statting that over, because that's like creating another whole day of work. And so by doing our synchronization process, it's way simpler to get to the stats that matter and to be able to see what's going on. Let's see. Next question is, this is a long one here. Let's see. I focus heavily on serve and serve receive numbers for my club teams. I take pencil and paper notes on how well the server puts the girls out of system by correlating the pass rating to who served the ball. I have not seen how this can be used within the rotate 1, 2, 3, or have you considered this approach rather than trying to get the serve speed up, especially for younger teams? Yeah, so one of the things that we are adding to the product is that we are adding the serve rating. So you see here this pass 1, 2, 3. These passing numbers, when it becomes your serve, will turn into serve 1, 2, 3, and then ace and error. So you will be able to track the quality of your player's serves and to see, again, exactly what you're talking about, which is how much is your server putting them out of system. Now, one thing you should really know, though, is a key statistic that we have is called point scoring by player. And let me see if I can dig up an example of that here. Let me bring this up to here. And in player ranking, right, we can look at serve, and you can see point scoring percentage. And if you click on the column here, right, it will actually sort on that. So here you can see Stephanie, right, is the highest point scoring percentage person. Now, point scoring percentage, of course, is how long you are holding the serve. Now, people say that, well, it depends on who's in the front line and all those kinds of things. And that's true. But if you play a lot of matches, you're going to find that it kind of all averages out, and you really see that certain players really hold the ball a lot longer. And Stephanie's really interesting because in this whole 38-mile-an-hour case, she was the slowest ball server on the team. But she managed to put the ball into exactly what you're talking about, putting them out of system. In fact, it paid out in her point scoring number. Okay, so I completely agree with you about tracking this stuff with younger players, because I'm coaching a 13 developmental team this year, and they're serving maybe 30 miles an hour on a good day, 32 on a good day, right? But they're still doing a great job. I mean, the ace rate's just ridiculous. I mean, they're scoring about 33%, about a third of the balls are aces. So it just shows you the difference between the serve and the receive capabilities. I hope I've answered your question. If not, please keep asking me. Okay, let's see. I have strong, tall, and athletic players, but passing is a nightmare. Oh yeah, I know this situation. Tried statting them in practice, and only 2 of 13 passed above 1. What do you suggest? Yeah, you know what? This is a real problem. In fact, our club director has a phenomenal team like that for teens. Unfortunately, the liberos he picked up weren't so great, and so he's suffering from the same issue. All you can do at this point is really, really work on passing and passing technique. One thing, and this is a huge investment, but we bought a Sports Attack ball machine about 3 years ago, and man, we use that thing like crazy, because that ball thing, it'll launch balls at a phenomenal clip. 2 things about it. 1, it shoots the ball at a really consistent pace, and 2, you can push more serves through that machine you can possibly do through your arm. And it's really helped our teams do better, because one of the things we find is that people have little quirky tendencies of moving their arms around too much. And with that machine, if you're not steady and solid and just hold your arm in place and just meet the ball will just go ricocheting all over. We launched that serve at about 38 to 40 miles an hour on the girls, and it hurts. It really hurts. But guess what? They get really good at receiving. If you can bring in a bunch of guys and just bonk your players and get them to really be consistent in their form, I think that's about the only thing you can do to continue to improve their receive capabilities. But this is a tough one, and I really feel for you because passing is the hardest skill in volleyball. Serving is the easiest skill in volleyball. So it's a pretty uneven race. And I'd be happy to discuss this more with you offline. So please feel free to email me. Let's see. Okay. There's some questions about, when should I buy or buying later. Don't worry about it. We'll have offers going through, and we'll continue to make improvements, and we have more products coming. And one of the key products that we're working on right now is a practice stat product that will also synchronize the video. I'm really looking forward to it because I could use it right now for me. So that's a really important one to have. Let's see. Other questions? Let's see, what time are we? We're got about 4 more minutes left here. Go ahead and continue to send your questions in if you have them. Hang on a second as I read through. Okay. Here's a question about the standard versus fast in rally. Actually don't have I think most of you are probably familiar with the standard. This is the fast in rally button set. So you notice there's only 6 players here. You can have 7, up to 7, including the libero, and then you notice the button straight across, right? So you have to put your lineup in each time and substitute people in. But the beauty of this system is that if I want to chart a dig for number 9 here, I just double tap the dig button next to her and it's done, right? So you don't have to find the player and find the button, and then the process is a lot slower. So if the game's going fast, this is a great way to do that. In the regular mode, all the players are on the court. And so, it's a little bit harder to find the right player. So the fast and rally buttons really help out in that regard. Okay, let's see. Interesting. Okay. So, any suggestions on using solo stats in practice? And my answer to that question is, unless you're scrimmaging, it's really hard. And that's why we're actually building a totally separate product, because it's very hard to get around the fact that it does rotations and all those other things, and it really makes it difficult to do. Use it for statting practices. So we're creating a separate app for doing that, which is going to look much more like a spreadsheet, and you can customize it to each of your drills and just put in the stats that matter for that drill, and then save it, and it'll just aggregate it into a web reports for practice. And then you'll be able to take those stats, synchronize it to video if you take video of your practice, and you'll be able to see your players' touches. It's going to be fantastic. I just can't wait for it to be done because I need it right now. All right, another question. Can you use the tool to can you use the tool to stat practice so they are not commingled with your matches? Oh yeah, so the way to do that is actually pretty simple. What I do is I create a team called XYZ team-practice, so a totally separate team. And that way, the stats don't get intermingled with your regular matches. So I'll just redo the roster and put it in twice in effect and make that my practice stats. And so I don't have to worry about turning them off. Now, one thing to remember is that in web reports on the settings tab here, you can go in and turn on and off teams and matches and things. So if you get, like, for example, you see these 2 test things, right? I could turn that off. And these were, practice items, right? Oh, this is actually practice one, that's why it's there. But can turn these things off so that they don't show up again when I go up to teams here and I select practice, right? Those matches are now gone, okay? So that's another way to control what you aggregate. Let's see, what do we have here? Yeah, right. Needed yesterday, same here, absolutely. Okay, let's see, we're at almost the top of the hour, so I think these are all the questions for now. Again, right, feel free to contact me with more questions, and I'd be happy to answer them. If you're interested in purchasing, just click on this, make that link, and we will be sending a copy of the suggested steps to you on the thank you email. So you should get that, if not this evening, probably sometime tomorrow. And I think that's it. Steve, any other questions up here?
Nope, looks good.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for attending. And again, please feel free to contact me with any questions you have. All right, have a great season. Goodbye.